The warehouse smelled like bleach and rust. 7 people knelt in a line, hands zip-tied, cleaning uniforms still damp. One woman whispered a prayer. Another trembled. Choi Man-sok stepped forward. His men followed, 3 shadows, guns drawn. His lieutenant held out a tablet. The Han River crew's been routing money through this place for 6 months. I know what they are. Man-sok drew his weapon. The slide racked. The woman at the end of the line didn't look away. Bruises ringed her wrist. Brave or foolish. Didn't matter. He raised the gun. Finger on the trigger. Pat. He froze. Pat. Pat. A soft, rhythmic sound from behind the crates. His men shifted. One whispered in Korean. Man-sok lifted a hand. Silence. Pat. 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 And then, between 2 shipping crates, she appeared. 4 crawls. That's all the distance between Michelle and Man-sok's gun. No one breathed. She wore a white onesie with yellow ducks, 1 sock missing, tiny brown hands pressing against dirty concrete. She didn't cry. She crawled straight toward him. His gun was still aimed at Tanya, but his eyes had dropped, tracking her. Michelle stopped at his shoe, looked up, smiled, then grabbed his pant leg and giggled. Man-sok didn't move. His men tightened their grip on their weapons. He still hadn't lowered the gun. Michelle pulled herself higher, reaching for him, for his hand, for his face. The dragon tattoo along his neck pulsed with his heartbeat, and he still hadn't lowered the gun. Michelle wrapped her tiny fingers around his thumb, held on, and he didn't pull away. If you love dark, slow-burn mafia romance where powerful men break in dangerous ways, subscribe now, because this story only gets darker from here. Now, watch what happens next. Tanya made a sound, not a scream, a crack in her throat. Man-sok's eyes flicked up. She was staring at her baby, face drained of color, trying not to move. "Boss," his lieutenant said quietly, "do you want me to—" "Don't." The word landed like a blade. Man-sok lowered the gun, slowly, not holstered, just lowered. Michelle babbled, reached higher. Behind the kneeling workers, someone gasped. "Oh my God, is that a baby?" Everything shifted. 3 guns snapped toward Tanya. Safeties clicked off. This changes protocol. If she brought a child into— "Don't." I said don't. Michelle tugged harder. Tanya finally spoke. Please. Not begging. Asking. Mother to— What did she think he was? Man-sok's finger slid off the trigger. He crouched. His men went rigid. Michelle's smile widened. She lunged forward, hands grabbing at his neck, at the dragon inked beneath his collar. Her fingers touched the tattoo, delighted. Man-sok went completely still. His free hand lifted, scarred, steady, capable of killing without hesitation. It hovered over her curls. Didn't touch, didn't pull away. Michelle tightened her grip on his thumb, and something in his chest went cold. He didn't want to let go. The elevator didn't make a sound. Tanya held Michelle against her chest, one hand cupped behind her daughter's head. The zip ties were gone. Her wrists were red, raw. Man-sok stood 3 feet away, facing the doors. He hadn't spoken since they left the warehouse. The numbers climbed. 40, 50, 60. Michelle squirmed. Tanya tightened her grip, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her ribs. Fast. Too fast. The elevator slowed. Stopped. Tanya's breath caught. She didn't move, didn't know what waited on the other side of those doors. They opened. White marble stretched out like a frozen lake. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Seoul spread below, a grid of lights stretching to the mountains. The city looked small from up here, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Mansuk stepped out first. His lieutenant stayed in the elevator. His hand rested on his weapon. His eyes moved from Mansuk to Tanya, then back, waiting for orders that didn't come. The doors began to close. Mansuk's hand shot out, stopped them. He looked at Tanya. She looked back. Neither spoke. The silence pressed down, heavy. Michelle made a small sound against Tanya's shoulder, not quite a cry, but close. Mansuk's eyes dropped to Michelle. Something shifted in his expression, too fast to read. He stepped back, made space. Tanya moved forward. The elevator doors closed behind her, sealing her in. The apartment was silent. Mansuk walked to the windows. His shoes clicked against marble, sharp, precise. He stopped at the glass, hands sliding into his pockets. The dragon on his neck was fully visible now, curling up from his collar into his hairline like it was alive. He didn't turn around. Tanya stayed by the elevator. Michelle's weight was warm in her arms. Real. The only real thing in this cold, perfect space. "You can sit." His voice was quiet, flat. Tanya's eyes moved across the room. Leather couches that looked like they'd never been used. Glass tables that reflected the ceiling lights. Art on the walls. Abstract shapes in black and white. Everything sharp. Everything expensive. She stayed standing. Mansuk's shoulders shifted. He turned his head, not looking at her, just listening. The silence stretched between them. Tanya counted her heartbeats. 5, 10, 15. "Your daughter needs to eat," he said finally. Tanya's jaw tightened. "I know what my daughter needs." The words came out harder than she intended. Michelle startled, little hands grabbing at Tanya's shirt. Tanya ran her palm down her baby's back, slow circles, the motion automatic, learned from 9 months of soothing. Mansuk turned fully now. They looked at each other across the marble. His face gave nothing away. Same controlled expression from the warehouse, same calculated stillness. But his eyes moved, from Tanya's face to Michelle, lingering there for 2 beats, then back. Reading something, deciding something. Tanya lifted her chin, held his gaze, didn't blink. Mansuk's head tilted, just slightly, like he was seeing her for the first time. "There's a kitchen," he gestured left. "Take what you need." And then what? The question hung in the air. Mansuk didn't answer immediately. He reached up, slow, deliberate, and loosened his tie. The silk whispered as it slid through his collar. His fingers were steady, practiced, like he'd done this 1,000 times while deciding someone's fate. "Then you feed her." "I mean after." Tanya's voice stayed level. "What happens to us after?" Mansuk pulled the tie free, folded it once, twice, set it on the glass table without looking at it. He met her eyes again. "I haven't decided yet." The honesty landed like a fist. Tanya's breath stopped. Started again. Michelle reached for her face, little fingers patting her cheek. Tanya kissed her daughter's palm, never breaking eye contact with the man who held their lives in his hands. "We're not staying here." Something flickered across his face, gone before she could name it. "No?" His voice was softer now, almost curious. "No." Tanya shifted Michelle higher on her hip. The movement made her daughter giggle, light, innocent, completely unaware. You want to keep us somewhere, fine, but I need my things. Michelle's things. Formula, diapers, clean clothes. Mansuk was quiet. The silence pressed in again. Tanya felt it in her chest, in her throat. She waited. Where? He said finally. My apartment, Hongdae District. Address. Tanya hesitated. Her fingers tightened on Michelle's back. Giving him that information felt like giving him everything. Where she lived, where she'd been hiding, the last piece of herself that he didn't already control. Michelle rubbed her face against Tanya's shoulder. Tired. Hungry. Tanya closed her eyes. Opened them. Recited the address. Mansuk pulled out his phone. His thumb moved across the screen. Quick, efficient. He didn't look up. It'll be here in an hour. How? I'll send someone. Tanya's stomach tightened. They'll need a key. Mansuk's eyes lifted from the phone, met hers. Held. The moment stretched. 2 seconds. 3. His expression didn't change, but something in his gaze sharpened, darkened. No, he said quietly. They won't. The threat was implicit, gentle, absolute. Tanya's pulse jumped in her throat. She felt it hammer against her skin, felt Michelle's weight in her arms, felt the marble under her feet, and the city lights at her back, and this man's eyes on her face. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't look away, didn't back down. Michelle yawned against her shoulder. The sound was soft, small. It broke something in the air between them. Mansuk moved first. He walked past her, giving her space, keeping distance, stopped at a hallway, pushed open a door. Bedroom, he said, didn't look at her. Bathroom attached, lock works from the inside. Tanya followed slowly, each step deliberate. She stopped at the doorway, looked inside. King bed, white sheets, more windows, everything clean, everything expensive, everything designed to make her feel small. The kitchen. Mansuk was already walking away. Help yourself. He disappeared around a corner. Tanya stood in the doorway, Michelle's fingers tangled in her hair, tugging gently. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered. Beautiful. Indifferent. Cold. Tanya stepped inside, closed the door. Her hand hovered over the lock. She pressed it home. The click echoed in the silence. Mansuk's phone buzzed at 3 a.m. He answered on the first ring, listened, hung up. The meeting couldn't be moved. The Yakuza didn't reschedule. He stood in his bedroom doorway, phone still in his hand. Down the hall, Tanya's door was closed, had been for 2 days. She came out for food, for Michelle's things, then disappeared again. Sometimes he heard her singing, soft, low, songs he didn't know. His lieutenant couldn't know about them yet. Mansuk checked his watch. 4 hours until the drop. He moved quietly down the hall, stopped outside Tanya's door, raised his hand, hesitated. His knuckles hung in the air. He stared at the white paint, at the lock she used every night, at the barrier between him and the only innocent thing left in his world. He knocked, twice. Soft. Silence. Then footsteps. The lock turned. Tanya opened the door 6 inches. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She wore one of his shirts, white, too big, sleeves rolled up. Her eyes were sharp despite the hour. They looked at each other through the gap. What? Not a question, a challenge. Mansuk kept his voice low. I need to leave. 4 hours, maybe 5. So leave. I can't leave you here alone. Tanya's hand tightened on the doorframe. Her knuckles went pale. You mean you don't trust me here alone? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Behind her, Michelle made a small sound, still asleep. Tanya's jaw set. What are you saying? You come with me. No. It's not a request. Then it's not happening. She started to close the door. Mansuk's hand caught it. Gentle pressure. The door stopped. They stared at each other through the gap. Her hand on one side, his on the other. 6 inches and a lifetime between them. The silence stretched. Mansuk could hear her breathing, could see the pulse jumping in her throat. He can have my men watch you, he said quietly. Would you prefer that? Tanya's eyes narrowed. She understood. Men she didn't know. Men who'd ask questions. Men who might not stay outside the door. Her fingers trembled against the doorframe. She stepped back. Let the door open wider. She stays with me the whole time. Yes. And we leave the second it's done. Mansuk nodded once. Tanya looked at him for a long moment. Her chest rose and fell, rose and fell. Then she turned away, moving to the bed where Michelle slept in a nest of pillows. Get out. I need to get her ready. Mansuk pulled the door closed. The carrier sat wrong against his chest. Mansuk adjusted the straps for the 3rd time. Michelle squirmed inside his coat, pressed against his dress shirt. Her breath was warm through the fabric. She made small sounds, not crying, just awake, curious. He buttoned his coat, checked the mirror. The bulk was barely visible, just a slight thickness, nothing that would draw attention. Michelle shifted again. Her small hand found his shirt, gripped it. Mansuk went still. He looked down, couldn't see her, just felt her there, alive, trusting. Tanya appeared in the doorway. She'd put her hair up, wore clean clothes his men had retrieved from her apartment. She stared at him, at his coat, at the way he held himself differently now. If she cries... She won't. Mansuk's voice was flat. You can't know that. If she cries, I'll handle it. Tanya's head tilted. Handle it how? He didn't answer. The elevator opened onto the parking garage. His car waited. Black, armored, windows tinted dark enough to hide anything. Mansuk opened the back door. Tanya slid in without a word. He got in beside her. His driver didn't react, didn't look back. Professional. They drove through Seoul in silence. Michelle shifted against Mansuk's chest. Her small hand found the edge of his coat, gripped it. He felt her settle, go still. Her heartbeat pulsed against his. Tanya was watching. He could feel her eyes on him. She likes you, Tanya said quietly.
Mansuk looked out the window. She's 9 months old. She doesn't know better. She knows enough. He turned his head, met Tanya's eyes in the dim interior. What does that mean? Tanya looked down at her hands, at the bruise still circling her wrist. Babies know who's safe. The words sat between them, heavy, impossible. Mansuk's hand moved without permission, spread across Michelle's back through his coat. Her heartbeat pulsed against his palm, fast, strong, alive. The car slowed. His driver spoke for the first time. We're here, boss. Mansuk looked through the windshield. The warehouse district, shipping containers stacked like building blocks. 3 black cars already parked in formation. Tanya went rigid beside him. Stay in the car, Mansuk said. What are you... Stay in the car. He looked at her, let her see what was underneath. His hand tightened on the door handle. Once, then released. Lock the doors. If anything happens, the driver knows where to take you. Tanya's breath caught. You're doing a deal, right now? With her? Michelle chose that moment to make a sound. A little coo, sleepy and content. Mansuk's jaw tightened. He opened the door, stepped out into the cold air, buttoned his coat carefully, completely. Michelle disappeared beneath Italian wool and silk lining. His lieutenant approached from the other car, stopped, stared. "Boss, are you—" His eyes dropped to Monsuk's chest, the slight bulk, the wrong shape. Monsuk met his lieutenant's eyes, held them. "Don't," he said quietly. The lieutenant's mouth closed. 4 Waukesha lumbers emerged from the warehouse. Monsuk walked forward. Michelle's hand curled against his heartbeat. Monsuk returned at dawn. The meeting had gone clean, no complications. The Yakuza never noticed the extra weight against his chest, the small warmth that shifted when he moved. One tiny fist gripped his shirt through the coat. She hadn't made a sound, not once. He unlocked the penthouse door, stopped. Tanya sat on the floor by the windows, not on the leather couch, not in the bedroom, on the cold marble with Michelle in her lap, both of them watching the sun come up over Seoul. She didn't turn around. Monsuk closed a door quietly, set his keys on the glass table. The sound made Tanya's shoulders shift, but she still didn't look back. He walked closer, stopped a few feet away. Michelle saw him first. Her face lit up. Her lurched forward in Tanya's arms, hands reaching. Tanya's grip tightened, held her daughter back. Monsuk's chest went tight. He watched Tanya's hands, the way her fingers pressed into Michelle's sides, white-knuckled, desperate. "She's fine," Tanya said. Her voice was flat, empty. "We're both fine. You can go do whatever it is you do." He looked at the back of Tanya's head, at the rigid line of her shoulders, at Michelle squirming, still reaching for him. "You didn't sleep." "How would you know?" "The bedroom door never opened." Tanya went still. The silence pressed down. Monsuk heard his own breathing, heard the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, heard nothing from Tanya. She turned her head, looked at him over her shoulder. "You were watching the door." Not a question. He didn't answer. Tanya's eyes searched his face, found it. Her expression shifted, surprise, then something else, something softer that she tried to hide. Michelle made a frustrated sound, reached harder. Monsuk crouched down, slowly. His knees protested. He'd been standing for 4 hours straight. He kept his hands visible, resting on his thighs. This close, he could see Tanya's face clearly, the exhaustion, the fear she was trying to bury, the way her left hand trembled slightly where it held Michelle's waist. His eyes caught on her wrist. The bruise was darker now, purple-black, ring-shaped, too perfect, too deliberate. Monsuk's hand moved before he thought, reached for her wrist. Tanya jerked back. Michelle yelped at the sudden movement. They froze. Monsuk's hand hung in the air between them. Tanya pressed Michelle against her chest, breathing hard. The sunrise lit half her face, left the other half in shadow. 2 heartbeats, 3, 4. "Show me," Monsuk said quietly. "No." Tanya. Her name. First time he'd said it out loud. Something flickered across her face. She looked away, jaw tight. Her throat worked, swallowing something down. Monsuk's hand lowered, waited. Michelle babbled something, patted Tanya's face. Finally, Tanya shifted Michelle to her other arm, extended her left wrist. Monsuk's eyes traced the bruise. Thumb, 4 fingers. Hard, meant to leave a mark. His voice came out colder than he intended. "Who? Does it matter?" "Yes." Tanya's laugh was bitter, sharp. It cut through the quiet penthouse like broken glass. "Why? So you can add them to whatever list you keep? Another body and another warehouse?" Monsuk's jaw tightened. He reached for her wrist again, slower this time, telegraphing the movement, giving her time to pull away. Tanya didn't move. His fingers circled her wrist, gentle. His pulse hovered just below the bruise, close enough to feel the heat of it. Her pulse jumped under his skin, fast, wild. "Who?" he said again. Tanya's eyes met his, held. The moment stretched between them. The sunrise painted them both in gold. Michelle went quiet in Tanya's arms, watching them with wide, curious eyes.
My ex. The words came out flat, dead. Michelle's father. He didn't want a baby, wanted me to. She stopped, swallowed. Her eyes went distant, seeing something else, somewhere else. Mansock's thumb pressed slightly harder against her pulse, not hurting, anchoring. I didn't, Tanya continued, so he decided to convince me. Mansock's other hand curled into a fist against his thigh. Where is he now? I don't know. I left, took Michelle, been moving every few months since she was born. She tried to pull her wrist back.
Mansock held on, gentle, steady. His name. Tanya's breath caught. She looked at him, really looked, like she was trying to see past the dragon, past the gun, past the cold marble and expensive suits, to see if there was something human underneath. Marcus, she whispered. Marcus Webb. He's American military, stationed at Camp Humphreys. She pulled harder this time. Mansock let her go. He stood. Tanya watched him rise, her expression guarded, waiting. You can't touch him, she said. It wasn't a question. Mansock looked down at her, at Michelle, at the bruise someone else had put there. You think I can't? His gaze didn't waver. Tanya shifted Michelle higher on her hip. I think you shouldn't. He's not worth it, and I don't need you. She stopped, started again. I don't need you to fight my battles. Mansock looked at her, at the way she held Michelle like a shield, at the bruise she'd been hiding, at the pride that kept her spine straight even when she was terrified. The woman who'd crawled into his world by accident and refused to break. No, he said quietly, you don't. He walked past her toward his bedroom, his hand reached for the door. But I'm going to anyway. The door closed behind him. Tanya sat on the marble floor, holding her daughter, staring at where he'd been. Michelle reached toward the closed door, made a sound, soft, wanting. Tanya's eyes burned. She pulled Michelle close, pressed her face into her daughter's hair, and didn't let herself hope. Not in his world. Mansock came back 3 days later. Tanya heard the penthouse door open at midnight, heard his footsteps cross the marble, heard them stop outside her bedroom door. She waited. He didn't knock. The footsteps moved away. In the morning, she found him in the kitchen. He stood at the counter in dress pants and an undershirt, no jacket, the dragon tattoo curved up his neck, fully visible. His hands were wrapped in white gauze. Tanya stopped in the doorway. Michelle was awake in her arms, babbling softly. Mansock didn't turn around. There's coffee, he said. Tanya looked at his hands, at the blood seeping through the gauze on his right knuckles. What did you do? Made coffee. That's not what I meant. Mansock's shoulders shifted. He picked up his cup, took a sip, set it down with careful precision. He won't bother you again. The words were quiet, final. Tanya's breath stopped. She walked further into the kitchen, set Michelle in the high chair Mansock's men had delivered with the rest of their things. Michelle immediately reached for the tray, slapping it with both palms. Is he dead? Tanya asked. Mansock turned around. They looked at each other across the kitchen island. His face was blank, professional, but there was something dark in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. No. Will he be? Not unless he's stupid enough to come looking for you. Tanya's hands gripped the edge of the counter. Her knuckles went white. You didn't have to. Yes, Mansock interrupted. I did. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Michelle made a loud raspberry sound, breaking the tension. Both adults looked at her. She grinned, did it again, spit bubbles forming at her lips. Tanya moved to wipe her daughter's face. Mansock got there first. He pulled a kitchen towel from the counter, crouched down beside the high chair. Mansock's men had delivered with the rest of their things. Michelle stopped making noise, stared at him. Mansock stared back.
His face was set in that same controlled expression, sharp jaw, narrow eyes, the face that made grown men confess to things they didn't do. Michelle tilted her head, studied him. Then she reached out, grabbed his nose with her entire fist. Mansock froze. Tanya's breath caught. Michelle squeezed, made a delighted sound, started bouncing in her chair. Mansock's eyes went wide, just for a second. Then he caught himself, tried to arrange his face back into that neutral mask. But Michelle was faster. She let go of his nose, grabbed his cheeks instead, squeezed them together. His lips puckered involuntarily. And Michelle laughed. Not a giggle, a full belly laugh, the kind that made her whole body shake. She released his face, clapping her hands together, then reached for him again. This time she grabbed his ears. Mansock's expression was somewhere between bewildered and horrified. Michelle thought it was hilarious. She laughed harder, louder. Her little hands patted his face, his hair, his tattoo. Everything was funny. Everything was wonderful. Mansock looked up at Tanya. Something in his face shifted. The hard edges were still there, the danger. But underneath, panic. He started. Michelle grabbed his nose again, honked it like a horn. She dissolved into giggles. Mansock's lips twitched. Tanya saw it, the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. There. Gone. There again. Michelle leaned forward, pressed her forehead against his, made a soft cooing sound. Mansock went completely still. The kitchen was silent, except for Michelle's gentle babbling. She patted his cheek, once, twice, then settled back in her chair, content. Mansock stood slowly. His wrapped hands hung at his sides. He looked at them, the blood seeping through the gauze, the evidence of what he'd done. Then he looked at Michelle, her smile, her complete, terrifying trust. She shouldn't, his voice was rough, she shouldn't do that. Do what? Tanya asked quietly. Mansock's jaw worked, his hands flexed, fisted. Touch me like that. Tanya moved closer, stopped an arm's length away. Why not? Mansock looked at her. His eyes were dark, haunted. I'm not... He stopped, started again. I'm not someone children should trust. But she does. She's wrong. Is she? The question hung between them. Mansock's throat worked. He looked back at Michelle, at her bright eyes and gummy smile, at the way she reached for him again, fingers opening and closing. He didn't move closer, but he didn't move away either. Michelle made an impatient sound, reached harder. Mansock's hand lifted, hesitated. His bloodied knuckles hovered over her small head. Tanya held her breath. His fingers touched Michelle's hair, soft, gentle. And for the first time since Tanya had known him, Choi Mansock smiled. It was small, barely there, gone almost as soon as it appeared. But Michelle saw it, and she laughed again. Mansock's phone rang during breakfast. He looked at the screen, his lieutenant. He stood from the table, walked to the windows. Yes? Tanya watched from across the room. Michelle sat in her high chair, mashing banana between her fingers. Mansock's spine went rigid, his free hand curled into a fist against the glass. When? He said. His voice was flat, dead. A pause. Show me. He hung up, stood there, staring out at Seoul. The morning sun caught the dragon on his neck, made it look like it was breathing. Tanya set down her coffee. What happened? Mansock didn't turn around. Get Michelle ready. We're leaving. Leaving where? What? Now, Tanya. The use of her name made her move. She unbuckled Michelle from the high chair, wiped her hands. Michelle protested, reaching back for the banana. Mansock's phone buzzed. He looked at it.
His jaw tightened. Tanya saw his reflection in the window, saw the way his expression went cold, colder than the warehouse, colder than the night he'd held a gun to her head. "Let me see," she said quietly. "No. If it's about us, I deserve to know." Mansok's reflection stared at her. Long seconds passed. Then he turned, held out the phone. Tanya shifted Michelle to one hip, took it. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance with a long lens, but clear enough. Mansok stood outside a small playground, not in his suit, casual clothes, jeans, a black jacket. Michelle's hand wrapped around his index finger. She was taking steps, toddling. He was bent down, matching her pace. His face was visible, every angle, every feature. And he was smiling. Not the small, careful one from the kitchen, a real one, soft, unguarded. Tanya's chest went tight. "When was this?" she whispered. "Yesterday, while you were sleeping." "You took her out without telling me?" Mansok's eyes met hers. "She needed air. You needed rest." "That's not—" Tanya stopped, looked at the photo again, at Michelle's face, pure joy, at Mansok's hand, steady and careful, at the way he looked at her daughter like she was something precious. "Who took this?" Tanya asked. "Han River crew. They've been watching." The name made her stomach drop. "The people from the warehouse?" "Yes." "What does this mean?" Mansok took the phone back, deleted the image. "It means they know about you, about her. It means you're leverage now." His voice was calm, controlled, but Tanya saw the way his hand shook, just slightly, before he steadied it. "What are you going to do?" Mansok looked at Michelle, at her banana-sticky hands and bright smile, at the way she reached for him, babbling his name wrong. "Data," Michelle said, clear as day. Mansok's breath stopped. Tanya saw something crack in his expression, something he'd been holding back since the warehouse, since Michelle first crawled toward him. He crossed the space between them, stopped. Close. Too close. "I'm going to end this," he said quietly. "And what?" "The war, before it reaches her." Tanya's free hand caught his wrist. "Don't do something stupid." Mansok looked down at her hand, at the bruise that was finally fading, at the way her fingers wrapped around him, not restraining, anchoring. "It's already done," he said. "What's done?" "I called a meet, neutral ground, tonight." "A meet?" Tanya's grip tightened. "You mean a negotiation." Mansok's eyes lifted to hers. "Or an execution. Depends on them." The silence pressed down. Michelle made a sound, reached for Mansok's face. He caught her hand, gently. His thumb traced her tiny knuckles. "If this goes wrong," he started. "It won't." "If it does," Mansok continued. His voice was steel. "My driver knows where to take you. Money, documents, everything you need to disappear." Tanya's eyes burned. "I don't want—" "I need you to promise me." Mansok's other hand came up, cupped her jaw. His touch was careful, reverent. "If I don't come back, you run. You take her and you run and you never look back." "Mansok!" "Promise me." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. She hadn't realized she was crying. Michelle patted both their faces, confused by the tension. Tanya's throat worked. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Mansok leaned forward, pressed his forehead against hers. "Promise," he whispered. The word broke something in her. "I promise." He pulled back, looked at her one more time, then at Michelle. He pressed a kiss to Michelle's forehead, soft, quick, like he was afraid to linger. Then he was gone. The door closed behind him. Tanya stood in the empty penthouse, holding her daughter, listening to the elevator descend. Michelle made a questioning sound. "Dada?" Tanya closed her eyes. "Yeah, baby," she whispered. "Dada." Outside, Seoul glittered. Beautiful. Indifferent. Watching. The conference room smelled like leather and cigarette smoke. Monsock sat at the head of the table. His 5 lieutenants arranged themselves in a semicircle. None of them had sat down. That told him everything. "Boss," his second-in-command spoke first, Park Min-jun, 20 years of service, 3 bullets taken for the syndicate. "We need to talk about the photograph." Monsock leaned back in his chair, didn't speak. Park shifted his weight. "The Han River crew sent copies to everyone, our allies, our enemies, even the Russians." "I am aware." "Then you understand what this means." Park's hand slapped the table. A printed photo landed face up. Monsock and Michelle, the playground. "You understand what you've done." Monsock looked at the photo, at Michelle's tiny hand in his, at his own face, unguarded, soft, human. He looked up, met Park's eyes. "Yes." Park's jaw tightened. "That's all you have to say? Yes? What would you like me to say?" Another lieutenant stepped forward, Choi Sang-woo, younger, ambitious. "We'd like you to explain why you're keeping witnesses alive, why you brought them into your home, why you're walking around with a child like some—" He stopped. Monsock's expression hadn't changed, but something in the air shifted. "Like some what?" Monsock said quietly. Sang-woo's throat worked. "Like you've gone soft." The words hung in the air. No one moved. Monsock stood slowly, his chair scraped against marble. He walked to the windows, looked out at the city, at the territories he'd built, the empire he'd carved from blood and fear. "Soft," he repeated. The word tasted strange. Behind him, Park spoke. His voice was careful, measured. "Boss, we've followed you for years, trusted your judgment, but this—" He gestured at the photo. "This is a weakness they'll exploit. The woman and child are leverage now." Monsock didn't answer. "Then why keep them?" Monsock's hand pressed against the glass. His reflection stared back, cold, empty. The dragon on his neck looked like a chain. "Because I choose to." "That's not an answer," Sang-woo said. Monsock turned around. 5 men stared at him, men he'd bled with, men who'd killed for him, men who were looking at him now like they didn't recognize what they saw. "It's the only answer you're getting." Park's hands curled into fists. "The Han River crew is planning something. We've heard whispers. An attack. They know about the penthouse, about the woman, about—" "I know. And you're doing nothing?" "I didn't say that." Sang-woo moved closer. His voice dropped. "Then what's the plan, boss? Because from where we're standing, it looks like you're choosing a woman and baby over the syndicate." Monsock's eyes cut to him, sharp, dangerous. "Watch your tone." Sang-woo didn't back down. "Or what?" Sang-woo's mouth curved slightly. "Like Marcus?" The room went silent. Monsock's jaw tightened. Park stepped between them. "We're not your enemies, boss. We're trying to protect you, protect all of us, but you need to make a choice." "I already have." "Then say it," Park pressed. "Tell us what matters more, the syndicate or—" "Enough." Monsock's voice wasn't loud, didn't need to be. Everyone stopped talking. He walked back to the table, placed both hands on it, leaned forward. "You want to know my plan? Here it is. The meet happens, they agree, or they disappear." Park's eyes widened. "That's—"
suicide, Sang-woo finished. You can't take out their entire command structure alone. I won't be alone. You think we're going to help you? A short laugh. After everything? Mansak straightened, looked at each of them in turn. You'll do what you've always done. Follow orders or leave. The silence that followed was crushing. Park and Sang-woo exchanged glances. The other three lieutenants shifted, uncertain. And if we choose to leave? Park asked. Mansak's expression didn't change. Then you leave. No hard feelings, no consequences. Walk away clean. It was a lie. They all knew it. No one left the Dragon Syndicate clean. Park studied Mansak's face, looking for something. The man he'd used to know. The cold, calculating killer who'd built this empire. He didn't find him. When did you change? Park whispered. Mansak didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the photograph still lying on the table, Michelle's hand in his own face, unguarded. He didn't recognize himself. His fingers tightened against the edge of the table just slightly. I don't know. Park nodded slowly. The meet is at 8. Yes. We'll be there. Sang-Lu's head snapped around. Min-jun! We'll be there, Park repeated. His voice was steel. But after tonight, we're going to have a longer conversation about the future of this syndicate. Mansak nodded once. The lieutenants filed out. Mansak stood alone in the conference room. He picked up the photograph, studied Michelle's face, her joy. His phone vibrated against the table. Unknown number. It vibrated again. He let it ring. Once. Twice. The room remained silent. Then he answered. Hello, Dragon. The voice was smooth, amused. Ready to watch your world burn? The line went dead. He didn't move right away. The city hummed beyond the glass. Mansak studied the photograph. His thumb traced the outline of Michelle's fingers. He set the photograph down carefully, reached for his gun. Mansak came back to the penthouse at 3. The meet wasn't until 8, 5 hours. He found Tanya pacing with Michelle. The baby was fussy, pulling at her ears. Tanya looked exhausted. She needs air, Tanya said without looking at him. She's been cooped up for days.
Mansak's jaw tightened. It's not safe. Nothing's safe, Tanya finally met his eyes. But she's miserable, and I can't... Her voice cracked. I can't keep her in a cage. Mansak looked at Michelle, at her red, tear-stained face, at the way she reached for the windows, for the world outside. He pulled out his phone, texted his driver. 10 minutes, he said. The park 3 blocks north. We stay visible. We don't separate. Tanya's shoulders sagged with relief. The playground was empty. Too empty. Mansak noticed it immediately. A Saturday afternoon in Seoul. There should have been dozens of children, parents, noise. Instead, silence. His hand found the gun at his back, stayed there. Tanya set Michelle down on the rubber mulch. The baby immediately crawled toward the slide, babbling happily. Something's wrong, Tanya whispered. I know. Mansak scanned the perimeter, buildings on 3 sides, too many windows, too many angles. His driver waited by the car, hand inside his jacket. Michelle reached the slide, pulled herself up. Tanya started toward her. Mansak caught her wrist. Stay close to me. She's fine. The first shot shattered the slide's plastic. Michelle screamed. Mansak moved, grabbed Tanya, shoved her toward Michelle. Get her, now. Tanya ran. Mansak's gun was already out. He fired twice at a window, 3rd floor, east building. Glass exploded. Tanya scooped Michelle up. The baby was shrieking, terrified. The car! Mansak shouted. But his driver was down, slumped against the door, blood spreading across his chest. 3 men emerged from behind the building, armed, professionals. Mansak fired. 1 dropped. The others scattered, returning fire. Bullets tore into the playground equipment. Metal screamed. Rubber shredded. Tanya was frozen, crouched behind a bench with Michelle pressed against her chest.
Mansuk ran to them, slid behind the bench. His back hit hers. "Can you drive?" he asked. "What? Can you drive?" "Yes, but—" "On my signal, you run for the car. You don't stop. You don't look back." "I'm not leaving you." "You're not leaving me." Mansuk ejected his magazine, checked the count. 8 rounds. "I'm coming with you, but I need cover." Another shot pinged off the metal bench. Michelle's screams had turned to hiccuping sobs. Mansuk looked at Tanya over his shoulder. Their faces were inches apart. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Tanya's eyes were wide, terrified, but she nodded. "On 3, Mansuk said. He turned back, counted the shooters, 2 still standing, 1 repositioning on the roof. Bad odds. 1. He took a breath, felt Tanya's spine against his, felt Michelle's cries vibrating through them both. 2. His fingers settled on the trigger. 3. Mansuk stood, fired 3 shots, rapid succession. Rooftop shooter dropped. "Go!" Tanya ran. Mansuk followed backward, firing. 1 shooter went down. The last one got smart, stayed in cover. They reached the car. Mansuk yanked the driver's door open, pulled his man out. He was still breathing, barely. "Back seat," Mansuk ordered. "With Michelle. Get down." Tanya obeyed. Mansuk slid into the driver's seat, started the engine. Bullets punched through the rear windshield. Safety glass spiderwebbed, but held. He threw the car into drive, floored it. The car screamed out of the parking lot. Mansuk checked the mirror. No pursuit. Yet. His phone rang. He answered on speaker. "Enjoying the playground, Dragon?" The same smooth voice from earlier. Mansuk's hands tightened on the wheel. "Who is this?" "You know who I am. The question is, how many more surprises do you think I have waiting?" The line went dead. Mansuk looked in the mirror, met Tanya's eyes. She was shaking. Michelle was quiet now, face buried in her mother's shoulder. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Tanya shook her head, checked Michelle. "She's okay. We're okay." Mansuk's jaw worked. His driver groaned from the passenger seat. "Dying." "Hospital," Tanya said. "We need to—" "No hospitals. They'll be watching." "He'll die." "He's already dead." The words were cold, final. Tanya's face crumpled. "You can't just—" "I can't save him and protect you." Mansuk's voice was steel. "Choose." The silence was crushing. Tanya looked at the dying man, at Michelle, at Mansuk. Her hand found Mansuk's shoulder, squeezed. "Drive," she whispered. Mansuk drove. Behind them, his driver took his last breath. Michelle whimpered, reached for Mansuk's reflection in the mirror. "Dada," she said, small, scared. Mansuk's chest cracked open. "You're safe," he said quietly. "I'm right here." Tanya's hand stayed on his shoulder. The city blurred past, and Mansuk realized something that made his blood run cold. He would burn Seoul to the ground before he let them touch his family. His family. The word settled into his bones. Permanent, irrevocable, true. They didn't go back to the penthouse. Mansuk drove to a safe house in Gangnam. 4th floor, reinforced door, 1 exit. Not ideal, but better than leading them home. He carried Michelle inside while Tanya checked the rooms. The baby had finally stopped crying. She clung to his neck, face pressed against his shoulder. Mansuk's phone buzzed. Park. "Boss, the meat's off. Han River just hit 3 of our warehouses. They're coming for you." "I know." "Where are you?" Mansuk looked at Michelle, at Tanya emerging from the bedroom. "Somewhere safe." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." He hung up. Tanya stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "How long do we have?" "I don't know." "Hours? Minutes?" Mansuk set Michelle down. She immediately grabbed his leg, unwilling to let go. "They'll track the car eventually, find this place." He crouched down, looked Tanya in the eyes. I need you to take Michelle. There's a back stairwell, goes to an underground garage. Keys are in the kitchen drawer. Black sedan, spot 12. Tanya's face went pale. You're staying? Someone has to. Then we all stay.
No, you don't get to decide. Yes, Mansuk interrupted. His voice was quiet, final. I do. Michelle made a sound, patted his face. Mansuk caught her hand, kissed her palm. Then he stood, walked to the window. 3 black cars pulled up outside. His chest went cold. They're here, he said. Tanya grabbed Michelle, backed toward the bedroom. Mansuk pulled his gun, checked the magazine. 17 rounds. Not enough. Never enough. Go, he said without turning around. Mansuk, go! Footsteps in the hall, multiple sets. Professional, coordinated. Tanya ran. Mansuk moved to the door, pressed his back against the wall beside it. The footsteps stopped outside. Silence. Then, the door exploded inward. Mansuk fired twice. 2 bodies dropped. Return fire shredded the doorframe. Bullets punched through drywall. Glass shattered. Mansuk dropped, rolled, came up firing. 3 more down. But there were more. Always more. He fell back, toward the hallway, toward the bedroom where Tanya had taken Michelle. A bullet grazed his shoulder. Pain bloomed, hot and sharp. Mansuk didn't slow. He reached the bedroom door, slammed it shut, locked it. The window was open. Tanya was gone. Good. Mansuk dragged the dresser in front of the door. Footsteps approached, fast, angry. Someone kicked the door. It held. Mansuk reloaded. Last magazine, 15 rounds. The door shook again. Wood splintered. Mansuk raised his gun, aimed, waited. The dresser shifted. The door burst open. Mansuk fired. 4 shots, 4 bodies. The magazine clicked empty. He dropped it, reached for his backup. Nothing. He'd left it in the car. Footsteps. More of them. Mansuk's hands curled into fists. Blood dripped from his shoulder. His vision blurred. He looked at the window, at freedom. Then at the hallway, at the bedroom door that led to the back stairs, the path Tanya had taken with Michelle. He could run, should run. Instead, he stepped into the hallway, stood in the center, blocking the path. 5 men rounded the corner, saw him, raised their weapons. Mansuk didn't move. His voice was quiet, steady. You want me, come get me. But you don't touch them. The lead man smiled. We already have them, dragon. Mansuk's world stopped. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone. Mansuk's hand moved to his pocket. A video message. Tanya in the garage, surrounded, Michelle screaming in her arms. The phone slipped from his fingers. Here's the deal, the man said. You come with us, quiet, no fight, and maybe we let them live. Mansuk's chest heaved, his hands shook. He looked at the phone on the floor, at Michelle's face, terrified, calling for him. Dada, Dada, Dada. His knees buckled. He'd failed them, failed her. The men moved closer, weapons trained. Mansuk raised his hands, slowly. You touch them, I erase your bloodline. The lead man's smile widened. On your knees. Mansuk's jaw clenched. He sank down, head bowed, defeated. The men surrounded him. One pulled zip ties from his belt. Mansuk closed his eyes, saw Michelle's face, her trust. He fixed it in his mind. A gun pressed against the back of his head. Any last words, dragon? Mansuk opened his eyes, looked at the phone on the floor, at Michelle's face. He held her gaze on the screen, didn't blink, didn't look away. The gun cocked. Then, gunfire, but not at him. The men around him dropped. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mansuk's head snapped up. Park stood in the doorway, gun smoking. 4 more syndicate members behind him. Sorry we're late, boss, Park said. Traffic. Mansuk couldn't speak, couldn't move.
Park grabbed his arm, hauled him up. Your girls are in the garage. Sang-woo's got them. They're safe. Mansuk's voice cracked. The video. Fake. They never got past our perimeter. Park shoved a gun into Mansuk's hand. But they will if we don't move. Can you walk? Mansuk looked at the gun. At Park. At the men who'd followed him, despite everything. Yeah, he said. I can walk. They ran. Down the back stairs. Into the garage. Tanya stood beside the black sedan, Michelle in her arms. Sang-woo and 3 men formed a protective circle. Michelle saw him first. Dada! Mansuk crossed the distance in seconds. His arms went around them both, pulled them close, felt their heartbeats, alive, safe. Tanya was crying. I thought they... Mansuk pulled them both into him, too tight, like he was memorizing their weight. Tanya's fingers fisted in his jacket. Michelle clung to his collar. He didn't speak. He just held them. Michelle grabbed his face, turned it toward her. Dada sad? His jaw locked. He held her face in his hands, looked at her, really looked. I'm here. Park cleared his throat. Boss, we need to go. Now. Mansuk nodded, but he didn't let go. Not yet. The warehouse smelled like gasoline and old blood. Mansuk stood in the center, looking at the dragon painted on the floor. His symbol, his legacy. 20 years of violence, distilled into black paint and fear. Park stood beside him. You're sure about this? Mansuk didn't answer immediately. He looked at his hands, at the scars, at the blood that would never wash clean. Yes. The explosion will be seen for miles. Everyone will know. That's the point. Park's jaw worked. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Documents, new identities, money in accounts they can't trace. He paused. For all 3 of you. Mansuk took the envelope. Their fingers brushed. Thank you, Mansuk said quietly. Don't. Park's voice was rough. You saved my life twice. This doesn't even come close. They stood in silence. The warehouse creaked around them, settling, waiting. The story? Mansuk asked. Han River crew cornered you. Final stand. You took 12 of them down before the building went up. Park's lips twitched. Died like the dragon. Violent. Legendary. And my body? Burned beyond recognition. DNA will match. Dental records, too. Mansuk raised an eyebrow. Park shrugged. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Mansuk almost smiled. Almost. The syndicate. We'll survive. Sang-woo's hungry enough, smart enough. He'll hold it together. Park met his eyes. You built something that doesn't need you anymore. The words should have hurt. Instead, Mansuk felt relief. Go, Park said. They're waiting. Mansuk walked to the door, stopped, looked back. Park stood alone in the empty warehouse, a soldier without his commander. Minjun. Park's head lifted. Live better than I did. Park's throat worked. He nodded once. Mansuk left. The car was running when he reached it. Tanya sat in the driver's seat. Michelle was strapped in back, already asleep. The explosion timer was set. 15 minutes. Mansuk slid into the passenger seat. Tanya didn't look at him. Her hands gripped the wheel, white-knuckled. Last chance. You can still go back. No, I can't. Your entire life is in that building. No, Mansuk looked at her. It's in this car. Tanya's breath hitched. She finally turned, met his eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. What if they find us? They won't. You can't promise that. No. Mansuk's hand found hers on the wheel, covered it. But I can promise I'll die before I let them touch you. Tanya's eyes filled. That's not comforting. It's all I have. She laughed, broken, wet. Then she kissed him. Quick, desperate, real. When she pulled back, her cheeks were wet. "Where are we going?" she asked. Mansock pulled out the envelope, found the documents. 3 passports, American, flawless forgeries. James Park, Sarah Park, Michelle Park. He looked up. New Zealand, small town, coast. We have a house. We? You, me, her. Mansock glanced at Michelle's sleeping face. A family. Tanya's hand tightened under his. "I don't know how to be normal," she said. "Neither do I. This could be a disaster. Probably will be." Tanya laughed again, softer this time. She put the car in drive. 12 minutes, Mansock said, checking his watch. They drove through Seoul, past the territories Mansock had controlled, past the clubs and warehouses and streets where he'd built his empire. He didn't look back. At 9 minutes, they reached the highway. At 6 minutes, they passed the city limits. At 3 minutes, Mansock's phone buzzed. A text from Park. "Go be dad." Mansock deleted it, powered down the phone, rolled down the window, threw it into the darkness. 2 minutes, Tanya said. Mansock looked at her, at the way the dashboard lights caught her profile, at the strength in her jaw, the fear and hope mixed together. He looked at Michelle, at her peaceful sleep, at the future she deserved. 1 minute, he said quietly. Tanya's foot pressed harder on the gas. They crested a hill. Behind them, Seoul glowed. Beautiful, deadly, home. Mansock counted down in his head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The sky lit up orange. The explosion rolled across the city like thunder. Windows shattered, car alarms screamed. The warehouse, and everything it represented, turned to ash and smoke. The cold dragon was dead. Tanya's hand found his, squeezed. "Who are you now?" she asked. Mansock looked at Michelle, at her small hand curled in sleep, at the trust she'd given him when he deserved none. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I want to find out." Michelle stirred, her eyes opened, found him in the rearview mirror. She smiled. "Dada." Something shifted in his chest. Not clean, not healed, but different. "Yeah, baby," he whispered. "Dada." Tanya drove. The city disappeared behind them. Ahead, unknown roads. A life without dragons, without blood. Mansock settled back in his seat, let his hand rest on Tanya's thigh, let himself breathe. For the first time in 20 years, the weight didn't crush him. The things he'd done didn't wash away with new names and ocean views. Michelle's laugh could quiet it. Sometimes that was enough. It was everything. Seoul burned behind him. The dragon is dead. But the underworld never forgets. Subscribe, because in this world, love always costs something, and the next story is darker.